Welcome back to the Bazaar. I'm Inko, and it's spoiler season again. As always, links to Mobalytics and the original reveals will be in the description below. I'm going to get right into this. This time around, I've not seen any of the original videos. I'm just giving my completely blind opinions on the new cards. And getting into it with what I feel is going to be immediately nerfed for Pig is the Tournament Arena. It is a large property that gives your toys multicast, and at the start of each day, get a random toy. Or to put that differently, this is Dooley's Robotic Factory, but for toys, except at silver with upside. And like, yeah, different characters, different rules, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, Friends and Dooley are more dangerous than Toys and Pig. But this is a Toys expansion. Toys is already an archetype. This is 2 tiers below. This is going to be a menace. This is going to be a problem. I'm predicting an immediate emergency nerf to gold. I cannot imagine that every multicast card got nerfed to gold or above and has gone through multiple iterations, and this one is somehow okay at silver. This is obviously really strong, and we'll get into more of what it can do as we start talking about more cards in this expansion. I don't feel the need to go on at length about why multicasting your items is great. This is obviously very strong. So we move on to Premium Piggles. Adjacent small items have their cooldown reduced by 1 second and +5 value during combat. When you win a fight, get a Premium Piggle, and at the start of each day, upgrade a random Premium Piggle. And you can see that we have the green Piggle for healing. It's a base cooldown of 8 seconds, and for every 5 heal, it has 1% CDR. And this is going to be the same sort of system they all have, with orange Piggles being base burn 4, at least at bronze, and reducing its cooldown for every 4 burn. Red Piggles being 10 damage, reducing for damage, and yellow Piggles reducing for shield, doing shield and reducing for shield. I will say that probably the orange Piggle is the hardest to get down to a reasonable cooldown, just because, you know, it's a lot harder to get +4 burn value than +5 damage or +5 heal or +5 shield. So of the lot, despite burn being clearly the strongest, it might be the one that's the hardest to make fast, and it's very likely that being fast is the most important part of this stuff. I don't really know how the Piggles are going to play out, but I do know that reduce adjacent cooldowns by 1 second is pretty scary, especially in a class where you're likely to run something like a yo-yo, so you can have a 1 second pin FT next to a yo-yo, for instance. There's a lot of cool things you can do when you're reducing the cooldowns of items. Obviously, it's only small items, but it's not even restricted by tag, it's just by size. So there's no shortage of ways this can be good. A bronze item reducing the speed of your other items is always going to find a way to be a relevant card. This looks very strong to me. How playable is a board filled with Piggles? I really can't tell you. What I can tell you is it will synergize heavily with the rest of the set, because we have the gold tier medium item Piggles board. It's a toy, and when you use a toy, charge another toy at 1 second. So, you know, figure out the infinite combo. I'm sure there is one. There's no shot this isn't good. The only concern is it being a passive item, Tournament Arena being a passive item. There's some concern about not having enough active item slots. But again, if your build pops off at like 1 second with a 1 second pin FT triggering a yo-yo, maybe being vulnerable to disruption's not the biggest deal. This seems very good to me. How's it best used? No idea yet. Toy builds are always sort of weird to me, where I can't really envision what they're going to look like before I sit down to play them. And it's going to be a lot harder to do that with a bunch of new items coming into the archetype, but this strikes me as obviously good. Maybe the reality ends up being that despite being insane, it just like tends to not get run because it's in some ways a worse tournament arena. But I imagine it's quite the opposite, and you either run them together or it's a better toy arena, especially because this is gold and there's only one way it's upgrading at diamond. There's only one thing on the card that can change, and that's 2 seconds. Maybe it's 1.5. But if this says 2 seconds on diamond, this is a crazy card. And maybe I should have talked about this right after the Premium Piggles. It's the PiggleStorm Gaming House, 6 second speed, +5 damage to weapons, +5 shield to shields, +5 heal to heal, and +1 burn to burn. And whenever you use a toy or friend, charge this 2 seconds. So this scales up every single form of Piggle that you can possibly be running. However, it is very worth noting that the cooldown reduction is not the same. 5 damage, 5 shield, and 5 heal are all the same. 1 burn is effectively 1/4 of the CDR value for the burn Piggle. So is it good? I mean, probably. It's basically just a really weird apropos chapeau that's probably faster and better if you're playing a toy build, but if you're not, basically unrunnable, right? It's very heavily locked into the like toy archetype, and probably not the way you want to be running your space in the toy archetype. But on the flip side, when you use a toy, charge a toy, and then you also charge this, maybe it fits right into that Piggles board sort of archetype, where all your toys are charging each other, which is charging this to scale them, and you don't even need to multicast them. I mean, you'd like to do both, but suddenly we're looking at 8 of the board slots taking up, and you aren't running a toy yet, so that's probably not it. That's the main problem with PiggleStorm Gaming House. It's competing with other items that might be more worth running than, frankly, kind of mid-scaling values. But it's going to be stupidly fast, so maybe these mid-scaling values are fine. I have a hard time evaluating this, especially not knowing how it upgrades, right? If it goes 5, 10, 15, who really cares? If it goes 5, 10, 20, I still don't think I care. If it's like 5, 15, 30, maybe we're cooking. It's just that 5 at silver, like, I look at this and I see 3-slot apropos chapeau with extra steps. The main thing that this actually looks really good for is a matchbox build where you're running a matchbox and a bunch of toys. The toys all charge this, and this buffs the matchbox. Like, it is an unironically large buff to matchbox. I'm still just kind of hoping matchbox goes down to a 4-second cooldown, but I guess, like, they kinda did that in a really roundabout way. I do think there's a place for PiggleStorm Gaming House. Obviously, there's already a place for stuff like Apropos Chapeau and Ganjo, but I'm not super hyped about it the way I am some of these other cards for Pig. I just realized while recording this that the PiggleStorm Gaming House matchbox and then like shield and heal Piggles, hopefully you can find some base scaling there so you don't have to wait 8 seconds for your build to start popping off. But there's actually a playing with matches archetype now where you use PiggleStorm Gaming House to scale up defensive Piggles to make them fast, to keep you alive while Matchbox burns your opponent progressively faster and faster, more and more, as your defensive scaling Piggles get faster and better at keeping you alive. That's sick as hell. I like that a lot. Do I think it's like going to be the best thing you can do? Probably not. Do I think it's cool and I want to make a video titled Playing with Matches? Yes, absolutely. However, where it's probably at its best is buffing Piggles Launcher, which is a medium tool weapon, 7-speed bronze item, deal 10 damage, shield 10, heal 10, burn 1. When you use a toy, charge this 1 second. So, I mean, you see how this works. You run a bunch of other toys, the PiggleStorm Gaming House and the Piggles Launcher. All your toys speed up the house buffs all your toys, and most notably the Piggles Launcher. And the Piggles Launcher is still very, very fast because you have all these other toys. And again, the main issue with this is like, am I running the house with the tournament arena for multicast? And then this is 8 slots and we have 2 more toys. Like, the big issue with the house is just there are other better things it feels like I could be running. Maybe I'm underestimating this. Maybe this is one of those things where it gets buffed before it goes live and it goes to 10 at silver and suddenly it's really good. But 5 at silver, even on a really fast item, is not exceptional, right? Silver Shark Claws are a 5-speed 2-slot item giving 20 damage, which, make no mistake, is the most important of these numbers. I just don't look at this and see the numbers being so high that it's like the best thing I can be doing at silver. You'll go into it sometimes, I'm sure. I'm not convinced. And it all comes down to like, all these items are big. And sure, the major synergy pieces are small, but there's a lot of small items that Pig wants to run anyway. Moving on to the Piggles Protectors, it is a small bronze toy, 6 speed to shield 4. It has double shield, and when you use an adjacent toy, this gains +2 shield for the fight. That's a little bit awkward because generally your fastest toys are, you know, like a yo-yo or something that wants to be adjacent to a yo-yo. It's kind of hard to put this next to something else that's really, really fast without hurting the fast item because you wanted a specific placement. I would say of all the items, this is the one I'm least hyped about. It's just like, you can run it day 1, it'll be fine, right? Like, this will be good shield scaling day 1 in the same way that Bronze Wallace can just win on day 1 sometimes. I'm sure Piggles Protectors can too as well. I just don't see a hype late game use case for this. Moving on to the display case, it's a medium tool, it's passive. At the start of each fight, adjacent items gain 2 value, and when you use an item with value over 10, shield 20. So obviously this just says gain 4 gold every time you get into a fight, provided you can give up 4 board spaces and win the fight, right? That's not necessarily something you can easily do. It also says permanently gain value on stuff during a fight, but I mean, we already have stained glass window for that. We know that's not going to be super broken. This can be useful just for like relatively quickly enabling stuff like Bad Blocker, or as we're going to talk about in a second, sponsored apparel. So it can help with that. Previously, it was kind of just all in on rewards cards, so having display case to help enable the value archetype is very nice. Where this card gets interesting beyond just being like kind of an economy option for Pig and a way to enable Bad Blocker is that passive effect. How good is that actually? If you fully enable a Bad Blocker, you could cut Bad Blocker in 1 small item, and instead of waiting 8 seconds for Bad Blocker to go off, Bad Blocker would effectively just become a passive item, right? Whenever you use your other items, trigger this. And if your other items are fast enough, it would vastly outperform a Bad Blocker. And the main purpose of that is in scaling for 28-hour fitness. You use this plus 28-hour fitness, and now your weapons self-scale and all shield as well. and that'll help a lot against burn, not so much in other matchups unless you like massively buff this. But yeah, in 28-hour fitness, this seems like a pretty big upgrade over a bad blocker to me. Then you have other use cases with like just throw this in on a high value stacked build with a Pygmalion drum and a wrist warrior. There's a lot of ways I can imagine using this. This feels like one of my favorite items from the set. A lot of the rest of this feels like there is a toy archetype that's just going to be really strong. I think this play case is just a good item. I don't look at this and think it's immediately problematically powerful the way I look at Tournament Arena. I could be wrong about that. Maybe this is just too good. Maybe it's too strong at generating economy, too good at enable. Because like rewards card at silver does about the same as this does for enabling bad blocker and has no value in combat. So like maybe it's too good at enabling bad blocker too quickly. And maybe it's just a really strong passive aspect, especially early. But like early on, this is probably not enabled yet, right? I don't know. I think this is a really cool, really good item. I don't think it's broken. I think I can imagine using this to a lot of success, and I can also imagine getting crushed with this. I think this is probably a very well-designed item, and I'd be unsurprised to eat crow saying that. I was very wrong about hydraulic press last month, but this genuinely looks like a good design for an item. It's scary, but any design that I like is going to be scary. I think this is fine. If it's not, whoops. I see how Tempo made the mistake if it's not okay. Anyways, moving on to sponsored apparel. It's a medium silver apparel. At the start of each fight, if this is in play, spend 8 gold to increase the value of all your items by 1. So again, this is going to be directly helpful for anything to scale with bad blocker. And also, that is a huge amount of gold to be spending. Oh god. But when you use a toy, shield equal to 1 times that toy's value. Is that necessarily great? It depends, right? In the early game, if you're running this with a pen FT, that's an insane amount of shielding. But in every other circumstance, like in the late game, how high do your values have to get for this to actually be a relevant amount of shield, right? I'm not super sold by sponsored apparel. I can see it being broken. I can see it being super underpowered. It really just depends on how this plays. I look at 8 and I feel like it used to be like 4 or something and it was super broken and now it's not good enough. Maybe the idea is like 8 gold is the average size of a board, and so it's just like 8 gold becomes 8 value. That would make it seem fair. Oh yeah, because people would, I can tell you exactly what happens if this is lower than 8, right? You just put a bunch of random shit on your board and barely win the fight and you generate a bunch of extra money, don't you? Yeah, that's why it's at 8. It's not because it was overpowered mechanically, it was overpowered economically. I wonder how it scales actually. It might increase the value scaling as you rank it up. If it does, I'm not impressed. I don't care that much. If it changes the value multiplier from 1 to 2 to 3, this could actually be really good in the late game. It really depends how this scales. And obviously, this does help you quickly enable a display case. You wouldn't want both on your board at the same time, but having this helps you get display case online quicker if you really are trying to make use of this bottom effect. Moving on to streaming setup, it's a gold starting item, medium tool tech. Again, passive, which is, there's so many passive items in the pig set, it makes me worried about trying to combo them. But your toys have double value during combat, and adjacent toys have plus critical chance equal to 1 times their value. Issue being, I can't really think, like other than PiggleStorm Cannon, or sorry, the Piggles Launcher, like getting scaled up by PiggleStorm Gaming House, I'm not really sure what toy I'm really trying to stack crit chance on. Even then, I basically need an insane amount of value scaling to give it 100 crit, which I'm not immediately sure is going to be worth 2 slots in a board like that, because it feels like the good PiggleStorm Gaming House Piggles Launcher sort of board has a ton of items on it, and you don't want to give up 2 item slots for a passive. Like, there are a lot of cards in this set where I look at them and I'm like, I'm not sure what it fits into. I know it does something, like 100% crit chance with a bunch of asterisks at the end is still 100% crit chance. I'm just not quite sure how we get there in a way that's better than the alternatives. I don't look at this and feel fear. I really don't. It's maybe broken in conjunction with something like sponsored apparel, but again, that's 4 item slots for purely passive functions, and it'll really depend how these things scale. Like, does this say triple value in combat or 2 times their value for the crit chance scaling, right? Because those are very different effects. Triple value during combat is worse than this for just getting crit chance, but much better for synergy with other pieces, so I hope it scales that way. I don't know. Streaming setup's a card I feel very, very torn about at the end of the day. It's not a card I feel hype about either, is the unfortunate thing. I don't look at passive cards and think, hell yeah, I'm going to have a great time with that. Passive cards just generally don't get me super hyped. and neither does Money Furnace, unfortunately. It is a bronze starting item, medium property tool, 10-second cast, burn equal to its value. At the start of each fight, spend 5 gold to gain 3 value, and if it's your only property, it has double value in combat. I mean, isn't this just luxury Kiwas? Like, I know luxury Kiwas isn't a property, but isn't this just luxury Kiwas? It's the same design, big, slow, value scaling, burn medium item. I'm sure it's good. You can win with Kiwas, you can win with this. I don't have it in my heart to care about this one. I'm sorry. I feel like I've seen this card before. That's all it comes down to. How do I think it compares to Kiwas? I think it's a little bit harder to scale because you, like with Kiwas, you can just build up money all run and then start dumping it into properties later. You don't have to be doing it all run. With this one, because it's on a per fight basis, you can't wait till later to start scaling it, which can be a little bit stressful for your economy. Restricting you to no properties means it doesn't combo well with Fort, so you're probably looking to use a phonograph with this as well. I would say that's a notable detriment compared to a Kiwas, right? Fort is generally a very good card. I would say that Fort Lethargy Kiwas is a lot better than a phonograph Kiwas setup, you know, most of the time at least. I would say the fact this combos very badly with Fort is not a point to its favor. Obviously, unlike Kiwas, you can just run it with Fort anyway and not get the secondary effect and then run a balcony because Kiwas is not a property. I think both of these get around half their value from their effect, right? I do wonder how this scales with tier. Does it have like burn equal to double this item's value? Because that would be crazy. Is it spend 5 gold to increase value by 4, 5, 6, by 6, 9, 12? Like, how does this scale? Because that really will affect how good it is. I would say it's directly comparable to Kiwas. Not like just similar enough that I'm not hyped for it, but like directly comparable in power, and Kiwas is playable. And this also all really heavily depends on how enchants change. I and a lot of others am really holding out hope that we see nerfs to Obsidian, Restorative, and Shielded, especially Obsidian. And if those get nerfed, then cards like Money Furnace and Kiwas will inherently go down in value. I think without knowing the enchant changes and the tier scaling on Money Furnace, I can't have an evaluation of it. I'm sure it's fine to great, but it's not a super hype card. Unlike Tournament Arena, which is getting nerfed immediately. Why is this at silver? Oh man, I'm actually very hyped about Premium Piggles. I don't know what this like value scaling is necessarily the best for, but it does have synergies that I'm kind of hyped for. The big thing is reducing cooldowns. Just having like a 1-second pin FT sounds very cool. I don't need to know what it's for. You can just put it in a build and hope it works out. I genuinely think that Premium Piggles will be doing something pretty gross. I'm just not quite sure how I expect it to play out in terms of like in-game board states at all. And I don't know whatsoever about the Premium Piggle collection, how these are going to fare. I want to believe they're crazy and broken. But because they have like the 8-second startup time, right? Like I look at this, 1% CDR for every 5 damage it has. You have the PiggleStorm gaming house. And it's like, man, is there a way to make the dream happen? And I want to see it. I'm sure you can do something with the Premium Piggles. I'm just not sure what yet. I'm hyped for it. I want to see it, but of all of the cards here, it feels like PiggleStorm Gaming House is remarkably fair compared to the multicast, compared to the charging. Piggles Launcher is just like a cool way to capitalize on scaling, and I think that's a good thing for Pig, but at the same time, the biggest weakness for Pig's early game is you have so many things where it's like, if I scale this, I'm busted, and so many cards just don't do anything in isolation, and the set's really not helping to fix that. And I am interested in seeing how stuff like Display Case and Sponsored Apparel come out, but mostly my overarching feeling is I'm happy to see toys getting fleshed out. Sure, some of this looks a little bit overpowered, but I'm still happy to see toys getting more support as an archetype, because it has felt like very nearly there in the previous expansion for me. It's not quite there, and I think this should be enough to get it over the hump. That said, with how much card pool dilution we're seeing, I'm not actually sure if it will be remotely consistent, and we're getting closer and closer to the phase of the game where maybe just like pushing an archetype isn't really viable. And then that gets into even like more stuff like, okay, if the card pool is that diluted, is PiggleStorm Gaming House ever good? Or is this just 3-slot apropos chapeau and a ton of builds? I'm having a really hard time evaluating the Pig set. There's definitely some broken stuff here, definitely some weaker looking stuff here. I'm interested in seeing how it plays out. You tell me what I'm missing. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.